So the recipe that we use, or that I use here, I use all the time, and I use it for our cakes and our cupcakes. It's a reliable recipe, it's delicious, and it's also, not too hard and not too soft, and good enough for everything that you want to do when you're decorating a cake. So it's a good cake decorator's recipe. I'll tell you a few of the rules of baking while I tell you about the recipes, the ingredients rather. We're going to use eggs. Your eggs should always be at room temperature. We're going to use flour. Your flour should always be sieved. We're going to use sugar, and we're going to use, today we're using margarine, and I use margarine most of the time, stock margarine, but you could use butter, depending on your preference, and then the flavor of your choice. And even though it seems that we use just one recipe, you can mix it up in different ways, which I can show you later. Right, so the recipe that we use the same quantity of everything. When I say everything, I mean same quantity of flour, sugar, butter, and eggs, and then you would flavor it how you want it. So today we're going to work with 500 grams. So we're going to use 500 grams of flour, 500 grams of sugar, 500 grams of stock margarine or butter, depending on your preference, and 500 grams of eggs. Now you say, how do you know what's 500 grams of eggs? Actually, one egg is 50 grams approximately, and it doesn't really matter if it's not exactly 50 grams. But we measure our eggs, or we calculate our eggs as 50 grams per egg. So if you're using 500 grams, you'll automatically be using 10 eggs. And that's the way you would do it. So that's the recipe. It's easy to remember. For every 100 grams of everything, you use 2 eggs. For every 50 grams, you use 1 egg. For every 300 grams, you use 6 eggs. I hope that makes sense. And then, of course, the quantity that you use depends on what you want to bake. So the tools that you use for baking would be obviously your mixer and other stuff in your kitchen. Bowls, kitchen utensils, everyday kitchen utensils. And what would be helpful to have would be a spatula. I have different sizes and shapes here, but you just choose what works for you or what you have available. And if you don't have one, don't worry about it. You could always improvise. You could either use a stand mixer if you have one, or you could use a hand mixer. Or if you feel like you're ready for a workout, then you could use a wooden spoon as well. In fact, I'm told that using a wooden spoon gives you a nicer cake. But that's another story for another day. Right, so preparing our tins. If you're doing cupcakes, you just use your cupcake cases. Try and get one that's good quality, and just put one in each of the receptacles. So that's ready for when our batter is done. For the bigger tins, now there are other ways that you could do it, but what I do usually is I mix some butter or margarine with some flour. So just a bit of margarine, about the same amount of flour, like that. And I'm going to mix it up. Once I mix it, then I'm going to just use a brush and brush it onto my tin. You could also brush the butter on and then dust it with flour, but I find this actually works quite well, and the cakes just fall out of the tin. So it's all mixed. Now, so with a pastry brush, I'm just going to take some, I'm going to just brush the inside of my tin. So this works much better than just brushing your tin with the flour. So there we go. Just brush. Try and get it all the way around. So this is our homemade cake release. You don't need to get a spray or anything, you just make it yourself. Sometimes you could add a drop of oil to it, but then this, like I said, this just works perfectly for me. And once the cake is baked, you just turn it over and your cake falls out. Right, so we're going to bake our cake using the creaming method. So we'll start with our margarine and our sugar. So sugar goes in the bowl, margarine goes in the bowl. The bowl goes on the mixer, or if you're using a wooden spoon, start beating. And today we're using the paddle attachment, or the K beater, has different names, but basically it's not the whisk, it's not the dough hook, it's the one that you would use more than any other. So paddle attachment goes in your mixer, and we'll just get it going. I'm going to put it on like a medium-high speed to start with. Okay. Right, so if you have a look, this is nice and really fluffy, and your butter or margarine has gone really white or light in color. So at this point we're going to add some flavor, and today we're using vanilla. So this is just vanilla paste. Just add some to it. And we're ready to finish this up by adding our eggs and our flour. So put this on a low speed. 2 eggs start with. Yeah. You want to do this quite quick because you don't really want to overbeat your flour. So that's why it's on a low speed. And as soon as all the flour is in, we're going to stop our mixer and do the rest by hand. I'm going to take the rest of my flour and dump it in. And then I'm going to show you how to fold your cake in. Okay. So this part is very important. So once you have the rest of your flour, just dump it in, or you put in it a little at a time, that's fine. You're going to start folding your flour in. So I'm starting by taking my spatula and just scraping the outside. And I'll try and go right to the bottom. See, I have some egg mixture that's settled, and I'm going to now use what you would call a figures of 8 or an S motion. So you're going to cut it through. Take your spatula, let me just show you. You're going to take your spatula, cut it through, go right under, scrape the bottom, come up, cut it through again, and then scrape that side. And then while you're doing it, you're going to also turn your bowl. So let me do that. So cut it through, turn your bowl, again. I'm doing this slowly, but usually I do it quite fast. So just give me a second. It's my apron. Right, so make sure you always go to the bottom. And always scrape the sides. So that's my S. Just think of it like you're writing the number 8, but always go in as deep as you can and keep turning your bowl. You could do it slowly, or you could do it like a maniac, like myself, and then underneath, fold over, go underneath, fold over. Just keep turning your bowl while you're doing whatever it is you're doing, so that you go all the way and get everything. This is the most important part of making sure that you get enough air into your cake, and then you also have a nice cake that's not too tough. If you had left the flour in there and left the beater on, you're going to overbeat your flour and your cake is going to end up quite hard. I think I'm all mixed, and that's ready to go in the tin or in your cupcake cases. Always check the bottom, make sure there's no egg that's settled. There we go. Now we're ready. It's ready to go in the oven. So our batter is ready. Our batter is ready, and we're going to use an ice cream scoop to put it into our cupcake cases. Now, if you look at these two scoops, one is actually bigger than the other. This one is probably the one that you would find most of the time. This one you would have to search for it, but this is the right size if you want to get a flat top cupcake, and you would use this one if you want to get one that has a slight dome. So again, your preference. And all you need to do is just put the scoop until it's just about full but not overflowing. Tip it over, press your scoop, and that's it. I'm going to do it one more time. So I use the side of my bowl to flatten it a bit. Use the side again to scrape it. So I have something that's about that much. Turn it over, and that's it. Now the main thing to know about when you're filling your tin, you would want to put your batter about 2/3 of the way up. So just turn it over. Because your cake is going to rise when it bakes. So there we are. And this is ready to go in the oven. Right, so let's just have a brief recap. Whenever you're baking a cake, always follow the recipe. That's the first rule. And then always measure your ingredients. Measure accurately. Whether you're using a scale or whether you're using cups, measure accurately. Then, unless the recipe says so, usually your cake has everything at room temperature. So you don't want to use cold butter because or you know, cold eggs, because one would affect the other. Baking is like chemistry, so you want to make sure that everything is around the same temperature so that everything mixes properly. And then also, most important thing, know your oven. I would say 70 to 80% of the problems that you have when you're baking, either your cake falls or it rises too high and cracks or something, it has usually to do with the temperature. It's either it's too hot or it's too cold. Even though most of your recipes would say that your baking temperature is 180 degrees or 350 degrees Fahrenheit, I think, 350 or 180, everybody's oven, every single person's oven is different, and you have to get to know your oven. One thing that could be helpful would be getting an oven thermometer and measuring within your oven the top shelf, the middle shelf, the bottom shelf, and that will give you an idea of what the temperature is. I mean, for a fan oven, if it says bake at 180, you could bring it down to 160 or even 170, and that would work for you. If you're using an electric oven, those ones tend to be quite hot. Then again, and sometimes they might be hotter on the top shelf than the middle shelf. Anyway, the main thing is once you get to know your oven, half of your problems are solved. And then finally, just be gentle, be loving, and have fun when you're doing it. And I think that's it for now. See you